Alright guys, welcome back. I'm not too sure which podcast I'm posting this on because I think it kind of spans three different types of podcasts I have. One of them, I talk a lot more about religion, traditions, different types of Christian traditions, especially the ones that I grew up around. And then one of them is more kind of like psychological, kind of about spirituality, psychology, and kind of like more esoteric topics, things that don't really fall into like a mainstream traditional like belief system, like views around like psychedelics and different things like that. And then another one is more like social issues, things like that, social issues around like relationships, dating, LGBTQ plus topics, different types of like gender identity topics and things like that. So I think this might be able to post on all three. So today I did want to look at something that I don't really want people to avoid, just because I already know, if you're anything like me, when you hear certain words or certain terms, you're likely to be like, I'm going to turn this off. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen to it. But, I'm not here to shove things down people's throats or preach at people or tell people they're doing something right or wrong. I'm mostly here to like break things down, and, help people kind of expand their minds and open their ideas and challenge things more, outside of what we kind of automatically get kind of taught. I think my main purpose in all of the podcasts really is to just help people with a lot of food for thought of different things that we kind of do that maybe don't really work for us on a lot of different levels. Like, a lot of us have habits, traditions, cultural things that we grew up with, ideas, different teachings, and whether it's from your family, sometimes when you're I don't want to say growing up, but like when you're kind of coming into your own way of living your own life on your own authentic level, sometimes you come to a conclusion that like some of this stuff just doesn't resonate. And I know a lot of people have those experiences, and then going through the whole Rona situation, people having more time to sit with different stuff that comes up that like they've never really had to deal with or think about or delve into ever. Just I think it's helpful for people to have something that they can listen to that's like, okay, I kind of get it. But there's a text I want to look at that's very, how shall I say this? Extreme, I guess, in its perspectives. And when I look at anything that has to do with a religion or denomination, I really look at the difference between faith of the people who, are, talking as their believer, like they're saying, I'm a believer in this religion or in this, sect or in this, doctrine, and I believe this with my full heart, or, I really have faith in this, that it's really the path I should follow. I'm convicted of this. Comparing that to control and people who are leaders that just don't really, I think they're kind of two sides to a leadership, maybe more than that, but oftentimes you'll see two sides to a leadership. If it's like in a religion or church or something, there's the one where it's like, we want more members, we want more people, and so there is that emotional component that they might, maybe not even consciously, but they kind of know how to play on, like, this emotional component of, like, either like fear tactics or shunning or, like, judgment tactics, and different types of ways to make people feel maybe like less than or bad about their actions and activities when they're not really following along with what the religion teaches or what the leader is saying is like the best way to live. So there's that type of leadership, and then there are the ones that I think they genuinely do believe what they're saying, and they do genuinely believe that a lot of the doctrines and traditions are valid for everybody's life, even people who don't believe that yet or never have or never will, that everybody needs to kind of be following that church or that religion because it's right and everybody else is wrong. So I like to talk about those things because a lot of times what happens is people get confused because I believe it's because they get like an emotional type of connection to ideas. Like, it's a new idea to a lot of people, or like an idea that comes with a lot of weight to it. So, and I'm going to get into the main topic, talking about this, one of the chapters about dating, courtship type of things, from this book called The Adventist Home. Those of you who know about Ellen G. White, shout out. But I like looking at different doctrines, different books, different texts that people follow. That's one that I've definitely grown up with. One of my parents got that from somebody early on in life, and I was raised in the Adventist church. I'm very familiar with Adventism. I'm not here to say people shouldn't follow Adventism or that they should. I don't really care what people decide they want to do. I'm just looking at things to, break it down and help people, be able to apply this type of thinking, not just to what I'm looking at in these specific book kind of chapters and passages, but more so, everyone has kind of maybe their own beliefs, even if they didn't grow up like religious. And I think it's always good to be at a place where you start to challenge those things. So I can break down something in a way that I like to look at stuff. And I haven't fully finished the notes on what I was breaking down. But I think it's a good topic to start with because it's something that a lot of people out there are kind of like maybe going back into, or that they're raised with, that it's a big social issue especially when it comes to the Rona situation. We've all been kind of stuck inside, not really meeting a lot of new people, or any people for that matter, for a lot of us. And so now that people are trying to get back out more, depending where you live, you might be getting out more. And, I think this can apply too. Like, not just with dating and courtship and like this chapter about it, but also kind of with other things that you might have been kind of thinking about while you were inside by yourself, stuck indoors, not really socializing like before. If you were very social before, you definitely probably noticed a difference. but not really socializing a lot before, and then slowly like getting back into this social life where it's like now everything's pretty different. Everybody's gone through a lot of different stuff. I don't know if you guys feel it, but I feel like it's different meeting people than it was. I've mentioned this before, how it's like, if people have jobs or not, if people have housing or not. Like at this time, it's like some things that you might even have looked at before, even if you take like dating, for example. I believe it's good to be open-minded and not like judgmental, but I mean, a lot of people say this, that like they don't want to date somebody who doesn't have a job or who isn't supporting themselves or doesn't have like good habits or health habits or, doesn't have a place to live or doesn't have a car, like things like that. I mean, some of it's superficial, like very surface level stuff, but, sometimes it's like a lot of us kind of just need somebody to be kind of in a stable position. And that's valid too. But, yeah, it's kind of different now, right? Because a lot of times if you're like trying to date somebody, they might not have any of those things. And so like before, it would be like something that a lot of people would just write those types of people off. But now I'm just saying all that to say that, there's a lot of factors contributing to people having to kind of shift their ideas, because it doesn't work. Like the old way of doing things isn't really working anymore for a lot of people. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting stressed out, because they're like, okay, I'm back at work. Okay, I'm back at dating. Okay, I'm back at hanging out with friends and family. A lot of us, depending on your culture, you have holidays coming up and it's like, I want to see my friends, I want to see my family, and it's like, do I really want to see them? Or like, I'm so used to being by myself, maybe it's less stressful. Or, what's going to come up at this Christmas holiday family dinner? Like, is it going to be like all the others, or is it going to be like different and weird on some level? But okay, so one thing that I've kind of noticed that I mean, people who know me very well, this about me. There's something that really kind of piques my interest about the Amish church. A lot of it is because, they're so traditionally different than other Christians. They kind of live a separate life outside of mainstream American culture. Some of them don't even live in the U.S. I've heard like some people moving to like South America and like Venezuela, like all kinds of like different places, which is fine. I mean, I have no problem with where people want to live. Like they're a very self-sustaining culture. They have their Pennsylvania Dutch language. They, they have communities of people where they're able to either have like factories or, furniture kind of like shops and different sorts of like building and carpentry and construction and farming and all sorts of ways, like homemaking and caretaking and like cooking and child rearing and all sorts of different like jobs and tasks that people do. They're very hardworking, and their religion basically promotes them following all of these very strict rules to work. They believe that they'll get to heaven by living this lifestyle, by avoiding the, modern comforts, avoiding a lot of times electricity, internet, telephones, cell phones, driving cars. I mean, there are like a whole lot of different things that they'll do with like either like getting in, like they can hire drivers, some of them, or like, and then there's this whole part of the culture that a lot of them practice. I don't know if it's like more than half or all of, I don't think it's all of them, but there's something called Rumspringa where they're allowed at a certain age, in their late teen years, where they're kind of like coming of age, they're allowed to kind of go out, experience what's called the English world, or like mainstream American culture for the most part. Music, concerts, drinking, but it varies. There is the very like maybe it's like a week for some of the groups might do it for like a week, and it might not include, like, you still might not be able to drive or wear different clothes or like different things like that. And then there's all the way up to the level of like the groups that believe it's okay for the kids to like live outside, get their own jobs, get their own place, their own house, apartment, whatever, go to school, college, work outside of their community, live with other people, date other people, have sex with other people, just do all the things that they're not really allowed to do. And when they decide to join the Amish church, they leave all of that and come back and follow all the rules. But they were given the opportunity to choose and were exposed to that lifestyle, at least somewhat exposed, to be able to kind of like, know for sure that they want to join. And it was mostly like looking at Amish culture that kind of got me thinking about more like kind of my own culture, how I grew up, like just a lot of just stuff that you just see. Like, it's kind of easier to see it in another person's lifestyle, or kind of like another person's culture through another person's lens, just kind of like observing from a distance and like seeing like, okay, this is kind of how they do this stuff. And I started kind of studying a combination of things. So what is said that happens in the church as far as the traditions versus, the Christian Bible itself. So there's always going to be that kind of difference, right? Between the Christian Bible itself, or the actual religion, if it's Islam or Judaism or whatever it may be, the actual religion itself, the actual text that people follow, and then the different groups that follow things differently, why they choose to do it that way, and then the traditions that they follow and the culture that they kind of have of their own, and their own denominations or their own belief groups within the major religion. And then in addition to that, there's the kind of what it looks like to not do that. So Rumspringa for Amish people is something that a lot of churches don't really have anything where it's like you're allowed to go do this other stuff for weeks or years or days or whatever it may look like. You're allowed to go do this. And as long as once you come back to the church, you're not doing that. Once you do get baptized, and if you do decide to come back and get baptized and you follow all the ways, I don't know of many or any other churches that really have it so that they allow people to go do that. I feel like people just do it on their own maybe sometimes, and then they leave, and then they might come back or they might not. But there is still that kind of pressure between like following the rules versus not following the rules, whether that's the rules that are what the religion says, or what the major texts say, or what the different groups of the different denominations say, like, because there's like differences between all those three things. And then there's the other side of like what it looks like when somebody has made a decision one way or the other. It seems like there's not really a lot of middle ground that people are allowed or said. I feel like it's said that there's not a lot of middle ground. I see a lot of middle ground. I see it with my own eyes and I observe it. I don't know any Amish people. My family knows Mennonite people. I don't know any specific person, that's, Amish, but I would say I know a lot of really, really religious people, that are religious from all different sorts of religions. But I can speak more to Christianity and specifically Adventism, because that's how I was raised. So I know it more from the inside than I know the others. So I feel like I can't really talk about the others because I don't have like personal experience with them on too deep of a level, other than like studying it and like knowing people from those groups, or maybe reading their religious texts and things like that, or maybe I've like come to some of their cultural events or come to their like temples and things like that and like tried it out just to see what it's like, just for the experience and stuff. But I wasn't like trying to convert or trying to like be in that religion or anything. Like, I've definitely studied a ton with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. I find their beliefs fascinating, and they're very relatable. I feel like Mennonites and Amish are like on the more extreme end, but then slightly less extreme. I think you see the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Adventists, probably Southern Baptists as well. But I don't know too much about Southern Baptists either. But I mean, I know kind of like basic stuff that I know, just because I interact with a lot of people from different religions. Like, I used to really love to. I used to always be like in forums online and stuff, and like talking to people from like all over the world about like their religions and stuff. Like, I really thought it was great, to just learn that way. But I'm not, yeah, I don't really feel like I would be the best person to speak on like every single religious background. So that's what's kind of in the background of my mind when I'm thinking about certain texts, right? So for people who don't know, I'm going to get into this book here. So for people who may not know, there are many books by Ellen G. White. Whether or not you believe she wrote things or you believe it was her husband or some other person, all those things are like things that you often hear people questioning. So you'll often hear people questioning the writings themselves anyways, but I mean, I'm not here to really talk about that because that's a whole topic of its own, right? Sorry, I'm trying to like work with this PDF here that's like really glitchy. Oh man, I'm trying to get to the beginning of this, but it's just really, I'm like 40 something pages in, trying not to scroll. I think I'm gonna have to just scroll. So The Adventist Home is written by Ellen G. White. This copyrighted version is from 2017. This edition was put into works in like 1952. Let me see. It says Ellen G. White's life was from 1827 to 1915. And that she wrote over 100,000 pages on a wide variety of topics. And so I'm trying to find like when this actual book, what year this actual book was written. I don't know. I keep seeing May 8 of 1952. I feel like it probably was older because it's written like this ancient kind of 1800s writing. This book has 18 sections, 87 chapters. The last chapter of this PDF is starting on page 431. So of the sections, I'm not going to read all the chapter names. There's a section. So first section is called the Home Beautiful. Talks about atmosphere, fundamentals, homemaking. It talks about an Eden home pattern, if you know about the Garden of Eden and things like that. The second section is a light in the community, talking about like influencing people from through your home life, like as well as, people you meet and like social situations and being a witness as like a Christian. Section 3 talks about choosing a life partner. And within that, there's chapter 8, which is common courtship practices. That's what we're going to get into. But it talks about, making the decisions and love versus infatuation. It talks about courtship. It talks about forbidden marriages, and when to seek like counsel of some sort. And section 4 talks about, it's called factors that make for success or failure. I'm not going to read all these chapters for all these other things. Section 5 for from the marriage altar. Section 6, the new home. Section 7, heritage of the Lord. Section 8, the successful family. That's a good section. It talks about the family as a sacred circle and children in school and their beginning school times and family companionship, love and security, preoccupy the garden of the heart, promises of divine guidance. Did I forget any? Oh, a work that cannot be transferred. Section 9 talks about father. It's called the house band, not husband. House band, like House band. Section 10, mother, queen of the household. Section 11, children, the junior partners. Section 12, standards of living. Section 13, the use of money. Section 14, guarding the avenues of the soul. Section 15, graces that brighten family life. Section 16, the home and its social relationships. And Section 17, relaxation and recreation. And Section 18, thou shalt be recompensed. I don't know what that word means. If I'm even saying it right, recompensed. Anyways, so this chapter 8, common courtship practices. Man, I don't even like reading this kind of stuff. I'll be honest with you. I don't like it. It kind of just gives me a kind of just, it's just like a heavy feeling. It's not like pleasant. It's not like, oh, I like this. This is something I really want to talk about. Or it's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's just that it's a lot. Like, I'm not here to argue. I know it's like controversial. Everyone can have their own viewpoints on things. I like looking at how to think about things that we think about. And I think applying a method to how we think, I mean, it can be tedious. It can be, a little bit of a struggle, but I think it's important. I'm coming more and more to find that it's important to search the things that we were taught growing up and, think about it, and especially I mention this because a lot of people don't really live in alignment with what they say they believe or what they do believe. And then I think that creates a lot of toxic problems in people's relationships because they can't reconcile with, okay, I don't follow these things, even though I think I kind of believe it, but I'm kind of like teetering and, hot and cold and kind of lukewarm. And, internally, I know in my heart of hearts, I may not really believe this stuff, but then I keep telling myself I do, or I keep telling myself I'm going to do it, or I keep telling myself, I'm going to do it later. And then I think this creates a lot of judgment for people to look down on other people. It creates this kind of comfort for people to be like, well, I'm just going to look outside of myself and I'm going to judge all these other people who aren't following all those rules that I think I believe in. And it's like, come on, that's not helpful either, because it creates these relationships that are just terrible. Like, it's terrible. And I didn't really think about it too much, but it kind of hit me today. I was like relaxing and I was like, let me see what kind of Amish videos I haven't really touched on. If you guys know me, I grew up with like a Friday night to Saturday night Sabbath. So like, I do like to kind of do some form of learning on like Friday nights, Saturday mornings. And so I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to have like a topic to kind of like delve into. So I was like, but I was just, chilling around looking at stuff. So I came across this video, these Amish guys interviewing each other. I was watching that earlier today. One of them, I watch his stuff often, and he was interviewing this other Amish guy about, they call it like their testimony, like kind of like why they left their church, and like he was kind of going through this whole story about the whole method, about like how they got shunned and how there were different like traumatic events that happened and different kind of like things that happened that were like kind of not really too like he started planning to leave the church near, like, I guess his brother had left the church, and his brother's wife and family were living separately outside of the Amish church for a while. And then when there was a death, I'm not going to go too much into that because it might be triggering for people, but there was a death that had happened in the community, and this guy's family, his parents wanted to go to the funeral, and I think they lived in like Wisconsin or Minnesota, like Wisconsin, somewhere in Wisconsin. And the funeral was going to be in Missouri, and so they went to the funeral. The parents did, and then the guy, they were going to be gone for like 4 days, and he was planning to leave and move to his brother's. And he was talking about his story about, like when we hear Amish people, when we hear about, church people, when we hear about religious people, you think, okay, like they're practicing like good deeds and being nice and kind to each other. But a lot of people, the more you've been involved in a religion pretty hardcore for a long time, you notice humans are humans on all levels. But I feel like what happens in like religious communities is it can be damaging for people, because these are supposed to be safer spaces for people, but a lot of times they're not. And it can be subtle. But he was mentioning how he had some kind of issue where he was getting teased all the time, and like he had some kind of weak pituitary gland situation where like he wasn't like maturing through puberty. He didn't look old enough. He couldn't develop muscle very well. He was, not getting the work done that his father needed him to do, like around the house or on the farm or whatever. I think he was farming. And just wasn't having good luck with his relationship with his father. And his brother was already gone, and so it was like a lot of pressure on him to kind of like keep things going. And I guess his parents weren't very supportive. They weren't thinking about his condition, his health condition, that he was born with. They just kind of ignored it. And even though he was getting headaches and nearly passing out and having all these like blood sugar issues and all these other problems, they kind of were just like, oh, he's not working hard enough. He's kind of lazy. He's like faking it. And, that really got to him, obviously, because like he wanted to leave, not just for that, but other people would tease him too. And so like other people in the community would tease him. about, other things. Like, he was, like, easy to scare and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like, he didn't feel, like, very safe there or very, comfortable or happy. And so he got to a place where he decided he was going to leave. And he talked about his process of leaving and everything too. And I think that is common for a lot of people. I just think it's not always because of teasing. And he did also mention about, like, studying doctrines and studying the religion. And when he started getting into, talking about being baptized into the church and, like, what he kind of noticed, at least with his group of Amish that he was a part of, he kind of noticed a little bit of discrepancies between, like, okay, like, I thought, if I'm going to get baptized, I'm going to learn, like, I'm going to start learning and, like, get all this knowledge about, like, God and the church and the Bible and all this stuff. And it turned out he was pretty disappointed that they were just teaching, like, basic stuff about, like, you need to believe in God. And it's like, he was like, I've already been taught that since I was, like, 3 years old. Like, that's not, like, news. And so he was disappointed that he didn't feel like he was learning. And it was kind of like a superficial, like, church kind of like playing a, it was like a play or something. It wasn't like actual, like, devotion to, like, a higher being or actual, like, community and, like, safe community and, like, good social environment. And I think a lot of people from a lot of religions have this kind of experience on their own levels, in their own ways. Some people leave completely because of it, and then some people kind of just find their own path that's, like, doesn't look exactly like the traditional method of following whatever it is. And so, let's see. So I'm not going to read the whole chapter because it's a lot. It's a lot. But, so chapter 8, common courtship practices. I'm just going to go through the sections first. So it's divided into, like, multiple bold points. So it says wrong ideas of courtship and marriage, keeping late hours, trifling with hearts, deceptive practices in courtship, sow wild oats, reap a bitter crop. Like, oh, is that the last one? Yeah, that's the last one. And there's all these, like, manuscripts that they quote from, Bible scriptures that they quote from. They have references at the end of every chapter, like, different sorts of church manuscripts, like, from, like, 1885, 1888, 1884, 1903. These are old things, like Fundamentals of Christian Education, Manuscript 4A, Testimonies for the Church, the Review and Herald, I said that already, Fundamentals of Christian Education. Yes, I said that already. The Signs of the Times, Messages to Young People. These are just the types of Adventist, manuscripts that you find. Like, there's so much to read outside of the Bible. Like, it's just a lot. There's a lot. Like, these are just some of the books, and these are, like, hundreds of pages worth of, like, in some of these books there or manuscripts of different types, like, there's just a lot to read. And so if you're thinking about it, like, a lot of religions do have this too, where they have, like, the main religious book, and then there's, like, these other little offshoots of, like, different groups of people who follow different doctrines. They're written documents or even, like, by word, like, spoken types of words of different people that they kind of follow. They follow, like, these teachings or beliefs or the writings or whatever it is that they follow. And sometimes they're even taught that you have to follow this or else you're not really going to be a part of us if you don't. And so the way I look at things, like, I broke down this one, like, the very beginning, for example. So I broke down this one. So with the section that's called Wrong Ideas of Courtship and Marriage. So it's just the first little paragraph. I'm not even going to read every single thing. I'm not going to read it all, because we will be here forever with the amount of information. Like, it's basically a lifelong practice of studying this kind of stuff. I grew up studying this kind of stuff. I grew up like the back of my hand. Like, I know a lot of this stuff, and I learned it young, and I feel like they teach people young because it sticks. A lot of the stuff I even notice, if I try and like study it now or learn it now, it's like I'm just so busy with so much other stuff, I don't devote that much time or as much energy. It doesn't just soak in. And, that neuroplasticity isn't quite there. I'm older, so the energy's not quite there. And then my memory is a little less sharp than it was, like, with certain things, like, but with religious doctrines and things, I think that's kind of one of those things I've always kind of been pretty sharp in, just because I've kind of developed, like, the skill of, like, study, of those types of things. But study now for me isn't so much to do it. It's not to try to follow it. It's more to not really discredit it or find like fault with it, but to challenge it, for my own self, more so, to say, like, is this something that I authentically relate to for myself, for my life, for me? Like, is this how I would say, yeah, this really resonates with me, and I think that, I need to live my life this way? Or is it like, not really. Like, I can see why people would go those routes or follow those messages or follow the writings and stuff, because they believe in it. And it's different if you don't believe in it, or if you think it's coming from like one of those other places I mentioned before, like some kind of like leadership, control, or scare tactics, or just people wanting to like rule over other people, or like a religion wanting to have like more people, or a church wanting more people. It could be like financial reasons they want more people, or whatever it may be. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph. Wrong ideas of courtship and marriage. The ideas of courtship have their foundation in erroneous ideas concerning marriage. They follow impulse and blind passion. The courtship is carried on in a spirit of flirtation. The parties frequently violate the rules of modesty and reserve, and they're guilty of indiscretion if they do not break the law of God. So when I look at something like that, it's like, it's easy to read it and just be like, yeah, these people are doing wrong, right? That's first, the way it's written is in a way that makes you think, oh, like, shoot, this is saying that there's stuff wrong meaning I shouldn't do that. So let me focus on what's wrong when I'm reading this, because that's what this section is even called. Wrong ideas of courtship and marriage. So you're already thinking, what are the wrong ideas? What are the wrong ideas? If they didn't label it anything, if they didn't label it the wrong ideas, this would just be like ideas of courtship and marriage, right? You would just come to that conclusion that like there's different ways of doing things in courtship and marriage, and then there's a really strict a really strict method of doing this, and then there's a more like flexible, kind of open-minded way of doing things. But it kind of implies that there's a lot of things that are wrong. And so some things that it implies that would be considered wrong, according to what this passage is mentioning, impulse is considered wrong. Blind passion is considered wrong. Spirit of flirtation is considered wrong. If you're not being modest, that's considered wrong. And if you're not practicing like reserve, that's considered wrong. And then breaking the law of God would be considered wrong. And so you can already see that, like, a lot of people don't even believe in any of those things that I just mentioned that would have been considered wrong, right? So if you're going to talk to somebody, what often happens is people are like, okay, I believe this, I'm convicted of this, this works for me, I see all these things as wrong because it says here that it's wrong, and I have this emotional thing that's happening to me that's saying this is wrong, this is wrong. And so now I'm going to go talk to other people and tell them that it's wrong, right? But if you talk to somebody and they automatically already don't think that there's anything wrong with those different topics, even the first paragraph isn't going to work, you know? It's like, and it's not about like trying to get people to believe you or whatever. It's just, you know, you can't come at people like that. It's like, it would make more sense if you're like, okay, I see my friend, and that's already judgmental. That's already judgmental, being like, I see this person is over there and they're doing wrong, so let me go tell them what my book tells me to go explain that they're wrong. That's already judgmental, right? I think a better approach, a healthier approach, and this is just how I see things, getting to know another person's perspective first, right? So you might look at them and say, oh, they do things differently than what this book says, or what I'm taught, or what my traditions or culture or religion or whatever, or my beliefs are. They're different than me. And you just might look at how they do things, and you might say, hey, let's go out to your comfort zone, you know, not come to my church, but let's go to your bar, you know, and talk about, you know, your dating life. Like, not like getting in everybody's business, but I mean, like, if you're friends and you're like maybe not on the same belief, the terms of belief, you know, you want to get to know them for no reason other than to get to know them because they're your friend, right? That's the agenda, is to get to know them because you care about them, not to get to know them because you want to convert them to your religion, not to get to talk to them because you want to put them down for doing things that you feel like you need to judge them on. If you feel like you need to judge people, usually you need to look at your own self and think about why you want to judge them. Usually it's because of some kind of insecurity. That's usually why people judge others. I wouldn't call it judging if it's like you see somebody doing something that you're like, that's reckless, that's dangerous, you know, you're going around doing all these things in your dating practices that are just like not healthy, you know, you're hurting yourself, you're hurting other people. Like, it doesn't have to be like killing or anything, but like you're causing emotional injuries and things. And like, yeah, that would make sense to step, you know, not like forcefully, but just like come to somebody and be like, yo, you're kind of like overdoing it. Do you notice that you're kind of overdoing it? I'm your friend. I just want to tell you that what you're doing is kind of not maybe how you see it. And maybe you're doing it because you have a lot of, you know, frustration about things, or you're trying to figure it out. And that makes sense. But it's like, I'm your friend and I care, and I don't want to see you going down a destructive path. And I feel like obligated to talk to you about it if I see you doing that, you know, like, it's not like I'm judging you, you need to follow my book, come join my religion, or else, you know, like, that is a whole different thing. But that's how people, a lot of times in religions, especially Christianity, they'll come at other people about like, I already believe this thing. I already believe in the law of God. I already believe in, you know, impulses being bad, or flirtation being bad, or, you know, not being modest being bad, or not practicing reserve as being bad. It's just bad. So I don't want other people to do it, and I see them doing it, and I need to like tell them not to do it. Like, that doesn't come across well. People don't like it. People don't enjoy you saying it. People don't, they're not gonna be open to you if you're doing that. And people can tell, right? It's almost like how we can tell when somebody comes knocking at your door and they're trying to sell you something, or when a telemarketer calls you. It's the exact freaking same feeling of like, this person's trying to sell me something I don't want. How do I get off the line? How do I shut the door? How do I be polite and be like, go away? It's the same reaction when somebody's trying to like convert you to their religion. Like, it's not pleasant. It's like, oh, here they come with this thing that I don't really want. But if you do feel like what you do is right and good and better or beneficial to other people, then you just do it. You do it and you live your life, and people are going to see the way you live your life, and they're naturally going to come up and talk to you about it. They're naturally going to ask you about, like, oh, why don't you drink? Or why don't you do this thing? I mean, I drink. I'm not going to say I don't. But I mean, they're going to come up and ask you about it because they're curious, because they see, oh, this might be beneficial for me to consider. And it's not like you are right, so that's why they're coming up to you. But there are different ways that people practice different things in their life, and it's okay. It's okay for people to shift what they're doing because they're like, that's not working for me. And then you look at some of your friends or family or people around in your work or whatever, and you're like, oh, they do this. And that seems to help them balance things out a lot better. And you might want to talk to them about that and find out what they're doing. But a lot of times, if it's not coming from a place of like wanting to get to know your friend or wanting to get to know this person, then the conversation probably shouldn't even happen unless it's like out of you trying to help somebody who's being destructive in some way or another. I don't really think it's appropriate to just be like trying to like convert people all the time. Like, that's really weird and rude and judgmental. But yeah, if you can already see that like somebody would look at something and naturally be like, I don't even believe in all these like strict things about your impulses and like modesty and all this sorts of stuff. Like, if somebody already doesn't believe that way, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to care about anything you have to say from a book from the 1800s. Nobody cares about this, like nobody cares unless they actually want to know. But if you do get to know them and you do see their life and you do see how they're doing things, it's good to know why it works for them, why they like it, why they do it, where they learned it from, what their tradition and culture kind of teaches, and get to know them almost on the same level that a person would try to like convert somebody. You want to just know that information that the person converting would want to be telling about their own selves to try to convert somebody. You want to know that stuff about another person. You don't want to try to convert them. You want to learn about them. Because that creates an authentic relationship. That creates an actual relationship and a trust level, and not just you're like an annoying telemarketer. So I think that's where a lot of religions go kind of wrong, is that they're selfish, and they practice these like selfish methods, thinking everybody needs what I do, everybody needs what I've learned, and everybody needs my advice, because it works for me. And it doesn't work. I see what they're doing, and I can't understand possibly how that works for them. So I'm going to tell them that they're wrong, and so I need them to change. And it's like, what on earth? Nobody likes somebody coming at them saying, like, you're wrong, you need to change, you're doing bad things. Like, it's like, dude, it's mind your own business. And I think, you can kind of see, if you have your own beliefs, even if it's not a religion, if anybody came up to you, your neighbor, anybody, and was like, I don't like the way I see you doing this thing, and, and it's not really a big issue, like, the way you mow your lawn, it's kind of weird and dumb, and I think you should mow your lawn like me. Let me come over to your house next week. I'm going to bring my lawnmower, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Like, if you're not even doing it wrong, and then they just want to kind of get in your business and do weird stuff, it's almost the same. It's like, it's totally overstepping. Like, let people just live their lives and do whatever the heck they want to do on their own terms. If that's what feels good to them, and they're not hurting anybody, there's really no reason to really approach it. But this whole chapter has ideas like this. This just about the wrong ways of doing things. Like, once you take down the main concepts that seem like they're judgmental and negative, you want to look at those terms and kind of maybe like define them, like impulsivity, or even something wrong. Like wrong in this context is something that's breaking the law of God. Breaking the law of God, or breaking the written information in Ellen G. White's textbooks. That's what, or not following what the church teaches, or what the religion teaches, or whatever. Like, those are three different things. That's like three different ways to be wrong. And then if you just consider it as breaking God's law, the law of God, I mean, the law of God, I think most people would believe the law of God is love. The law of God is not necessarily like some judgmental, forceful thing that's used to control people. But that's what religion has become a lot of the time, right? Is a judgmental, forceful thing that somebody's trying to control. Even, I mean, not even leaders. I don't even want to put this only on leaders, because when I think of it, I've known some really good leaders that really genuinely just care about your health and well-being, and they're never judgmental about like, oh, I don't go to that church, or I don't go to any church, or I don't believe in that anymore. And they're just like, I just hope, you don't forget where you come from, and just kind of, find benefit in your life and healthy decisions and balance and love. They're not concerned about like, oh, you don't still go to the same church I met you at when you were like 6. But yeah, there are also leaders, not leaders, but like people in the church that are judgmental and try to be controlling as well. And I think the judgment comes from a place of wanting that control. Like, if I'm judging somebody, it puts me in control because I know better than they do. At least in my head, I do. I know something that they don't know, so I'm telling them about what they're doing and how it's wrong. Because I know about it, and they're making mistakes because they don't know about it. So that's what I would say is one of the focuses is really, people want to judge, people want to control. It feels good to be like feeling better than other people, but I mean, it's not really the best way to build strong relationships with people, is to feel like you're superior because or do some religious thing that you feel like makes you better than other people. I mean, that's not really, I don't think that's okay, really. Like, but I think people do also kind of like, they don't really notice that it's kind of a toxic way of interacting, right? Like, the people I know who act that way, who are judgmental, who are, kind of like very critical and gossiping and all this stuff, those people genuinely feel like they're doing the right thing. A lot of them do. A lot of it comes from a place of, I need to do this because I'm right and I don't want everybody to go to hell. I mean, they really feel and believe this. And so part of me like sympathizes and feels like, well, how hard it is for them that they're like over there suffering because nobody wants to follow what they say. But at the same time, it's like, leave people alone, like, so it's kind of like, I can kind of see it from like the perspective of people who have the belief. And not everybody who has beliefs or religion or follows a denomination or a different sect or group or cultural, practices and things. Not everybody's judgmental. Not everybody's trying to be controlling. Not everybody. But the people who aren't are usually the people that you don't hear about. I mean, there's some, maybe like Mother Teresa, Gandhi. You hear about different people like that are like, whoa, like another level. Like the Dalai Lama, you hear about these people and you're like, wow. Like, but they weren't they weren't saying this kind of stuff to people either. They weren't like, you're wrong, I judge you, like, I judge you, you're going to hell. Like, they weren't like doing that, really. At least from what I know about them, they didn't seem to be doing that. But other people do, and I think when that is happening, it's from an insecure place. So if anybody is still trying to like is part of religion, or still wants to stay with their religion and is kind of conflicted about like, I don't want to do this because these people are driving me nuts, it's like, your religion isn't between you and the rest of the congregation of people. That has nothing to do with any religion, really, other than the fact of people having good social relationships. And sometimes, it's just best to take it as a challenge to practice a lot of the good, positive stuff that religions teach about love and peace and harmony and things like that, just swallow your pride and just suck it up and have to deal with these crappy people, and, you'll be better for it. But I mean, it's not to say that they're not going to hurt you, that it's not going to hurt, or that it's not going to be like a toxic environment. But you can still be, a loving light in your own religious community, and be religious and not be a jerk. And there are going to be religious jerks. They're the ones who are usually going to be at the forefront, that everyone's going to see and hear, that people aren't going to feel comfortable or good around. The best thing is really to focus on, not judging people, on creating the authentic, caring relationships, showing people love. I mean, people should know that they can come to you about things. I mean, maybe not like overwhelmingly so that like everybody's knocking on your door every minute of the day, like trying to get help from you. But, because you still have to live your life and balance your own stuff too. You can't just be all day, every day, just like giving. You have to give back to yourself too. But I know a lot of people really struggle with religion. I would say what I've learned about mainstream American culture and religion, especially Christianity, is that a lot of people are like, their Christian tradition isn't as intensive as some of the more like extreme Christian traditions, like the Adventists, like the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and Mennonites and Amish and all those guys out on that end of the spectrum of Christianity. Like, I don't feel like a lot of the other mainstream type churches are like, they're not so rule based. They do have schools, but I feel like they're not like, not every denomination is so focused on like educating their kids and educating their kids only within their religion, and keeping them outside of the mainstream culture to have like a life separate from the mainstream culture. I think like with Catholics and most other Protestant groups, you still see them at public schools, you still see them around doing things, and maybe in the household it might be pretty strict, or like inside the doors of the religious, places, it might be pretty strict. But, a lot of my friends and people that I've known and grown up with or like met, I wouldn't even really know what religion they were, or what, type of Christian they were. I'm not saying they're bad people. They're all great, amazing people. That has nothing to do, I don't want it to sound like that's what I'm saying, because I don't believe that at all. But the reason why I'm saying it is because I think there's some denominations where they are more like, they're very likely to kind of be outspoken and try to like convert people and to like change a whole lifestyle of somebody to have them come over and do all these things. But there's another part of mainstream American culture where people don't really care to do things that way, and I think that's fine. I wasn't raised around a lot of people who believe that. Being raised in an Adventist environment, people don't really believe that way. They believe that they're right, that the Adventist way is right. Keeping the Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night is right. Being kind of like knowledgeable of all these Ellen G. White teachings and things because of the health benefits of having a balanced lifestyle, that's right. I mean, there's a lot of, like, in theory, when I think about it and I look at it, I'm like, I do believe in these things, for the purpose of, like, balancing your lifestyle. I don't believe it as, like, a point of judgment. I don't believe it as a point of control. I don't believe it, should be something that you have to, like, try to make other people do. I think if you want to do this to balance your own life, then just do it. If you want to keep the Sabbath, you do that. If you don't want to work on the Sabbath, you just do it. If you want to be vegetarian or vegan, you just do it on your own. Like, you don't have to, like, have, like, a whole thing, like a whole conniption about, like, other people having different ways of living their lives. Like, it's not really something that's concerning or should be concerning. If you want to live your life, people will see how you live your life anyways. I don't think you really have to talk about it ever. Like, I don't think you ever really have to mention, I mean, people will maybe ask you, but I don't think you ever really have to mention what religion or denomination you are. People will know what it is. If they see something that you're doing that's consistent and seems beneficial to your life, and they notice that you're benefiting from it, people around you want to know what you do that makes it so that your life feels good and feels nice to you, that you feel happy. People look at happy people and they're like, why is this person so happy? I want to know why you're so happy. Why are you so peaceful? Why do you think in this sort of way? And, like, what are you doing that, like, helps you? People naturally will just want to know that just by you living your normal life, going to work, going to school, socializing, going out and stuff, and if you really want to connect with people, you can connect with people on a deeper level. You don't have to connect with them on some surface level, controlling kind of judgmental ego kind of, like, driven kind of, like, method of, like, talking to people. It doesn't have to come to that. A lot of times, unfortunately, it does, and that's why different religions and denominations get a bad name, because they're known for harassing people with all these kind of, like, problematic, judgmental methods that they try to, like, get people to kind of, like, be controlled. And nobody wants to be controlled, really. I mean, I don't want to be controlled. It doesn't feel good, and it's not, people don't gravitate towards it. Not really. And I think it's important for people to kind of know how to be genuine and how to have good connections with other people, and not spreading toxic lessons or, ideas. I just use that little bitty paragraph to talk about, just in general, how people look at stuff, how people look at something. I mean, if you're defining some of these things, I never finished the definitions because I was ranting. But, if it says that blind passion is wrong, so kind of like, if you're kind of having, like, passion is, like, when you really care about something and you're very, like, concerned, you have a lot of, like, emotional, like, emotional views, or, like, desire to kind of, like, sorry, there's some skaters, I'm kind of, like, really distracted right now. Like, yeah, so passion is kind of like when you really care about something, when you really have a desire to kind of, like, be involved with it. But they say blind passion, so it's kind of like, it's one thing to have passion. Blind passion is kind of similar to impulse, which it mentions before. Like, impulse is kind of just like acting without really too much conscious thought. And then if you have blind passion, it's kind of like you're acting without the conscious thought, but also because you really care about something, but you're not really thinking too much into it. So it's saying that that's wrong. So spirit of flirtation. I mean, everybody knows what flirting is. Like, just kind of like showing somebody that you care about them in a certain way, or like giving them the impression that you have like some sort of sexual interest or some sort of like fun, excitable interest that you want to like share with them without actually like always saying it outright. Like, you can say things that kind of like dance around it, but like you're not really like outright just like saying like, hey, I'm into you. Like, you're kind of like showing it in other like little fun kind of almost sexual ways. It doesn't have to be sexual completely, but kind of is implied. And the spirit of flirtation is kind of like when you're kind of like having the idea that you want to kind of react with somebody that way. And like when it talks about modesty and reserve, it's like modesty is I can just talk about it from the Adventist perspective. A lot of it has to do with clothing and what you eat or drink or how you spend your time. So modesty in Adventism is, not wearing maybe like skin tight things or revealing kind of stuff, or something that costs a lot of money would be not considered too modest. Something that is maybe like, let me see, like plain, more on the plain side. As far like it wouldn't be like overly decorated, kind of like loud, or like kind of like really fun looking, like party festive kind of stuff. Like it would be more kind of like subdued colors and things like that. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme. Like, people usually kind of wear whatever, but probably wouldn't be wearing like some glittery sequin, like, I don't know what name brands there are that cost a lot of money. I don't know if Versace makes freaking like dresses. I don't know, like something like that, like a gown, like one of those gowns that somebody would wear to like the Grammys or something, like something like that. I mean, it could still be modest as far as like how it looks, as far as the cut of it, but price wise, fancy stuff like that is maybe not really. I don't think traditional Adventists would really be like, oh yeah, that's modest. I don't really care what people want to wear. It's just tiring. I don't have energy to care what people want to wear. Just wear what you want to wear. Especially if you're an adult, like, who can tell you what? And reserve is kind of like when you're trying to like keep something kind of more to yourself. Like, someone who's reserved is like not really outspoken. They might think open-mindedly, or they might think, have thoughts of like like they might have thoughts, but they're not necessarily like not they're not really outspoken too much. They might be kind of shy, or act kind of more like they're shy. Like, they kind of like don't act too, like, they're not very like forthcoming with like everything, or like aggressive or boisterous, nothing like that. But kind of just looking at these words, I mean, when you even look at them and define them, it's like when you look at all those definitions of the things that it's kind of implying are wrong, like, do you believe that? Do you believe that this is wrong? Like, impulsive, blind passion, all those things I said, spirit of flirtation, not being modest or reserved, things like that. Like, do you feel like it's wrong. Because if you don't feel like it's wrong, then it's going to be hard to read something like this, right? So it's like, that's why I think it's hard for people when they're like wanting to like stay in their traditions, and then they start reading stuff and they're like, but I don't believe this, and that. And then it's like, I already feel like I don't, like, if I already feel like I don't believe that those things are wrong, and I'm about to read a whole entire chapter about courtship practices that are wrong, but I don't believe the same way. I don't believe that this is necessarily wrong all the time, or wrong at all, or wrong on some level, but this book is saying it's all wrong all the time. And so it's kind of like, that's one way to kind of challenge things, just kind of looking at it and challenging, like, why do I think like this? How do I think like this? Why, what's going on with my thought processes, and like, and then the emotional connection to it as well, which is usually like, kind of like, there's kind of multiple levels of an emotional, that dynamic, but I think a lot of it comes from, there's going to be an emotional charge to something that you were taught growing up. Usually you're going to have like some kind of an emotional charge related to that. And if there's like something with a religion where it's like they make you have this emotional connection to the scriptures or to the beliefs and the ideas, it's one thing to believe something or think about it or be taught it. It's another thing to hold to it because of your emotional kind of like connection to it. And I think that's one thing to look at too, because a lot of times people think I believe this, but it's not really that they think, like, their thoughts believe it. It's more like their emotions are connected to the ideas. It's almost like when you watch the news and you hear certain stuff, or in politics, for example, when there's like a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, you hear people like, if like, for example, if somebody's a Democrat and a Republican comes on the stand and starts talking, a comment that a Democrat might make is like, I don't even want to listen to the person. I don't want to listen to this person. Here come the Republicans and all their thoughts, and they think A, B, C, and D, and like, that's not right, it's wrong. And it's like, there's already this emotional kind of like tie to like why they already don't even want to listen to what the Republican person has to say. I mean, maybe politicians are like a not so good example, because I don't believe any politicians of what any of them have to say. But I mean, I would just say that, when it comes to religion, it's kind of the same thing. Like, people kind of have their beliefs tied up in emotion, and it kind of can cloud, any open-minded thinking. I noticed I have the same problem. Like, when for example, I was listening to that Amish guy, and I'm gonna wrap up soon, but I was listening to that Amish guy talk about his experiences, why he left the Amish church. Let me find it in my history. I can find it hopefully shortly. I can find this. So it was called so it's from the YouTube channel Eli Yoder, Eli as the first name, last name Yoder, Yoder, and it's called Levi Strauch's Testimony When He Grew Up Amish. I don't know what the rest of it says because it's next to the thumbnail, but if you look at Eli Yoder's channel and look at Levi Strauch's testimony, there's a part 1, there's a part 2. So, I was saying, like, I have that kind of like emotional kind of like reaction to things too. I think everybody does, but I was looking at the first one when I was listening to the testimony and his whole story and everything. It was like, cool, good. And then I started driving. I was on my way to the beach, and I was like, oh, it's about a 30-minute drive, so I want to like listen to the second part. And so I started listening to the second part. It looks like I got quite a ways in, like maybe 20 minutes in. But that part was Levi Strauss. I don't know if it's Levi or Levi. Levi Strauss talking about his kind of more like scripture based testimony of like different experiences he had that weren't Bible based while he was in the Amish church. So he started talking more about biblical scriptures and the Bible. And for me, it was kind of like, okay, I heard the first one and now here's the second one. And I'm like, I don't really want to listen to him like quoting the Bible, you know, like I kind of had this reaction of like, I can feel what he's saying. I understand where he's coming from, but there was something about him just like quoting the Bible that was like kind of a bit of a turnoff to me compared to him talking about his personal life and his own life story. I feel like for me, I got more out of that. Like, I feel like when somebody starts like quoting out of Bibles and stuff, I almost get that impression like, oh no, they're trying to like make me think a different method, or they're trying to like make me think this other way, or change my thoughts. But I'm like, I do try to be open-minded to it and listen to it, even if it's not the full. This one was like an hour and 30 minutes of him talking about it. I didn't want to listen to the full thing, but I was like, I'll give it some time and I'll listen to it in bits and pieces. I'm not going to listen to it all 90 minutes total. I just want to give it a chance because I did like what he had to say. So why wouldn't I like, hearing kind of like the scriptural passages that he kind of chooses to talk about. He's still talking about his own life too. And saying like, okay, Amish people don't do this, or Amish people, at least where he was raised, weren't doing this or that. And he's comparing it to like scriptures. But for me, I just don't like that. It's just something that for me, like I was raised around people who would do that to people. Like I would literally be like with groups of people who would just like invite people to their house, dinner thing, just to kind of like, it wasn't really like, I don't think they consciously were trying to ambush them, but it was basically an ambush. It's like, everybody invite your friends that aren't Adventists, and then it's like they just pull out some Bibles and be like, do you believe this? Do you believe this? How about ABC? How about XYZ? Do you believe this? Do you do that? You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And they do it to each other. They do it to other groups of Adventists. It's like, what's the purpose of like wasting your whole weekend night doing that? Like, the dinner was cool. It was fun to watch a movie together. Let's play some games. Like, let's do something that's like lighthearted and beneficial. And you can talk about like judging each other later on. Like, you don't have to do it like all right now. But I mean, it's like they would take events and like opportunities like that to kind of like try to tell people how they weren't living in alignment with what the Bible would say. And it didn't seem to me that it was coming from like a loving place. I feel like maybe they thought they were doing it from a loving place. And that's where there's a lot of like conflict, because it's like, it's hard to really know somebody's genuine kind of like why they're doing something. Like, because they don't really say like, I'm just trying to trap you because I feel low and I want to pump myself up and make myself feel better, so let me judge you about these things. Like, nobody says that. And you can't just like look at somebody's life and say like they're insecure so they're doing this. But it's hard to really know, like, between like, do they really believe it? Is it really like based on emotion? They feel like they need to kind of convert everybody. Like, it comes from a lot of different places. And a lot of times it does come from a place of love and wanting to spread like, oh, I found this thing that works so well for me and it works so good. It's changed my life. I want to share this with everybody. Who doesn't want to share that kind of stuff with your friends and your family? If I find some vegetable that like gives me like excellent focus when I eat it at night for dinner, and I wake up and I'm like, great, ready to go for work, of course I'm going to tell my friends to eat that thing. I'm going to be like, eat this thing. Like, it's good for you. It helps. Will they all eat it? No. Will I get mad? No. But I think when it comes to religion or something more like personal, people are like, well, why don't you eat my vegetable? Like, why don't you take what I have to say? Because it benefited me, you know, I need you to do this. I do think there are a lot of people who care like that, who do really think, hey, I found this thing that works so good. I really want to share it with all the people I care with because I feel like it could help them. But I feel like the message gets lost because people feel like they're being judged. People feel like they're being like, kind of like sold to, like I'm trying to sell this thing to you that you don't even want. Or people feel like they're trying to, like somebody's trying to control them. I think people would prefer to naturally come to these conclusions on their own, or to naturally have a curiosity about it on their own, and then they'll approach the person from that religion or from that non-religion or from that spiritual belief or that, you know, lifestyle. They're going to approach somebody. And like, I think all of us do that when we want to know something. We Google it, we look it up, we watch YouTube videos about it, we talk to people who are like from that culture. We want to get to know all the stuff about it because we think that they have something that we haven't learned yet. So we want to learn it and we want to practice and do it, and hopefully we find benefit and we're happier because of it. And I think everyone just does that to try to find their paths to happiness, or more happiness. I don't think that people really always are in a place to, or want to, or need to hear another person's kind of like doctrines and manuscripts and all these like traditional things, especially from religions. I feel like it hurts people when they feel like someone else is trying to control them. It's like, I thought this person was my friend, and now they just want to sit and like argue with me about like why I eat meat. You know, it's like, what the hell? What's going on? You know, like, and people take it too far. Not only just the mentioning of it, but it's like people will literally be arguing and, you know, like below the belt kind of comments and judging others, and just like, you know, they do this and they say, you know, we love you, we do this out of love, and it's like, that doesn't feel like love, you know, like. And I think with, I don't want to say just religion or Christianity, I think with anyone who has any kind of belief system, but definitely with religion, because of the history of kind of like problems that it's caused for people too. It's like, I feel like people often aren't able to hear of the beneficial sides. And I do think that a lot of religions have a lot of beneficial things that people can learn from them. Just like, you know, when I look at different cultures, like their diets, like Indian food diet or like Japanese food diet, and different kind of diets that, you know, people live longer, or they have different health benefits that Americans might not have in these other countries and other cultures, because they're eating these things healthy, and like they're doing these practices that are good and balancing and beneficial. I'm not saying you have to go and like do everything that the Japanese culture does, or do everything that people in India do, but, you know, there are pieces that people kind of see of other cultures and traditions, that they see it and they're like, that might benefit me, so I'm gonna be more open to like learning about it. And if you don't see that it would benefit you, you're probably not going to learn about it. I think it is okay for people to just kind of in passing like mention stuff, but other than that, I feel like if other people aren't like grasping at it, there's no need to really keep bringing it up all the time. But I think that's where a lot of religious people kind of aren't heard, is because nobody wants to really listen to that, and they don't really see it. They're not really in tune with the people who aren't religious, because of the mindset of like, the person who's not religious doesn't know. They're lost. They're in the dark. They're, you know, on the other path, you know. I need to bring them over here to the light on my path, you know, like, it's kind of like, it can really come from a genuine caring place, But at the same time, it's like nobody wants to be treated like that. It's not, especially if it's like an adult and another an adult, it's like, love people for who they are. I mean, what they do, you should love what other people decide to do. If it's working for them, you should be cheering that, like, they found things that work good in their life that they don't feel that they need to change because they're so happy with it. Like, if my friend wants to smoke a bowl every other day, why am I going to be like, that's bad because my religion says don't do it? It's like, if you're finding joy from it and it's not hurting you, if you're not telling me, oh, I'm having financial problems because I'm buying too much pot, or like, oh, like my lungs are having issues because I'm smoking too much weed, or my neighbors are complaining because the smoke is like going into their house, or like I'm doing it and it's illegal where I live, and something that's like, okay, like maybe calm it down because that doesn't sound like it's helping you. But if somebody's not actually having a problem with the thing that they're doing, I mean, just because I don't believe in it, and I have no problem with people smoking weed, guys. I mean, I've got a whole LLC like related to hemp. Like, I'm not even gonna like pretend like I like there's certain stuff that I am like totally like abstinent from, or I grew up Adventist, and you probably would never know, honestly. And like, other than just maybe like the style I have of like learning and my interest in things and the knowledge I have about certain stuff that like other people probably couldn't care less about if they didn't grow up Adventist because they didn't know about it because they never needed to. I have a lot of Adventist knowledge, but it's like, yeah, you wouldn't really necessarily know unless you talk to me more. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not like, oh, I need to look Adventist and pretend like I'm doing these things and then say that I'm doing it and say that I'm part of this thing, and then I just run around and do all this other stuff. Like, I don't care if people want to call me Adventist or not. Like, I don't really call myself much of anything. I just kind of try to live hopefully authentically, and I don't even get it right all the time. I miss the mark often. I honestly would say that I don't always live authentically. I can honestly say that because I know I don't. Because there is always this constant like pressure and conflict between like doing what I know that internally is good for me versus what I was taught versus what maybe my parents need me to be doing versus maybe what certain friends kind of like are more comfortable with me like talking about these things or doing this or that. Like, there are certain things where it's like, I mean, I'm not really feeling this way right now, but there were certain times, like not in the recent past, but like where I was just kind of like, I don't even want to drink. Like, it's not like it was like a problem. It was just kind of like, I'm trying to save money. Like, I don't want to like do this, but like all my friends love hanging out at bars and clubs. So I'm like, I can't really just like not go out with my friends, So it was like, I'll just go out and then I'll just have a drink. But then it's like, I kind of didn't really care to either. It was just like, I couldn't care less about this drinking thing. It was like stupid for me, I was just like, I don't like this. I'm not saying I don't drink. I'm not saying I've never drank. I've definitely drank. I'm not really like, I don't really care. It's just like one of those things. I'd say I probably care about alcohol more than I do soda. I mean, I think soda is kind of like not, I don't know. I'm not even going to go into it because I know it's like a controversial thing. But I do think that to live authentically, it's not that easy because it's constantly making decisions based on what you feel like you should do, based on who you kind of believe you are, or what you're coming into of yourself, and then what other people kind of might think or might see or might notice, and trying to like maybe adjust it a little bit so it's more socially acceptable. Or, I mean, I'm not saying everybody run around and just do whatever the heck you want, like light off fireworks at like 2 a.m. and wake up all your neighbors because I feel like it. Like, not like stuff that like that. Like, you still have to be considerate of other people, but it doesn't have to be like at the expense of your own authenticity is what I mean. Like genuinely like who you are, not just like all the stupid impulsive decisions that we all want to make every now and then, even if it is I want to hammer something. I want to go hammer something outside of my house. I want to fix the porch and it's like 12:30 at night, like I want to do like some random thing that it's going to be disruptive. Like that's not even a big deal, but still it would be obnoxious. I want to mow the lawn at like 5 a.m, like stuff like that it's like, really be a good neighbor. But I don't know. I really do feel that a lot of people can benefit from trying to be authentic. First of all, like finding out what it is that you are, who you are, what you stand for, kind of your own place in this world according to you, according to your own nature, not according to what some other person told you are. I think everyone has to find that out at some point in their lives. But it's hard. It's easier to just do what everybody thinks you need to do. It's easier to just follow. It's easier to be led. But you do, have the responsibility and ability to kind of, lead your own self too. Especially in an authentic way. You'll be happier that way. You'll feel more fulfilled. Other people will notice it in you. They'll notice like, oh, like you're really like pretty genuine. You're not like standoffish or egocentric or, I think the more people that can be kind of like less ego driven and more just kind of like there for others and, reliable and trustworthy. Like these are things that people are able to do when they no longer have that baggage from being insecure about not living in their own, their own kind of authenticity. Because that's what happens when people aren't living in that truth of their own. They end up going around judging other people and creating all these like toxic, crazy environments where it's like we've got so much chaos going around in different groups of people, and it's like, why would they even like do it if they're like not happy? But it's like part of them authentically believes in it, so they're gonna stay. And then there's another part that authentically is just like, this is too much. It's too much trouble, too much hassle. So then they'll stay, but then they're kind of like half in, half out because not everything resonates with them. But I think that's okay too. I think it's okay to challenge what things say and challenge books and challenge traditions and be like, even though I was taught this thing, I don't really see it. I don't really feel it. I don't think that's the right thing for me. And a lot of times it's hard to really know what's going to be right for you if you don't challenge things and don't look at them. Like dissecting like everything from like what you've learned in schools. Somebody brought up this thing on another it bothered me so much, you guys. It was this podcast where they were like kind of making fun of like certain textbooks. Like that wasn't the whole purpose, but like part of it, they were just laughing about some textbook, and one of them mentioned like the McGraw-Hill textbooks about it being from like Texas or something. I don't know how true this stuff is, but it was like just thinking about that and the way they mentioned it and how they were kind of like, that's a form of like controlling, the minds of like youth. If most of the public schools are using McGraw-Hill textbooks and they're all from a certain place where people are being taught from like a certain curriculum based on a certain style of like very conservative thinking, it's like no wonder people learn all this certain stuff this way. It's like it's definitely a form of brainwashing. I'm sorry guys, it is. It's like if it wasn't intentionally made that way, then why wouldn't there be more diversity in the textbooks? Why wouldn't, why wouldn't they consider other authors, other, publishing companies, But it's just important to look at things. It's important to look at different, I don't want to call them brainwashing systems, but I mean, that's what it is. We were all raised in some form of a brainwashing system, or a system where people were taught, where people taught us to do and don't think about what we're doing, and just live this way, live that way. Don't think about it, don't challenge it, just do it. But there is a relationship between that and kind of like how it manifests in people's lives as like a toxic, at least like these toxic kind of ways of dealing with others, because we're not dealing with ourselves. Like, we have to deal with ourselves as well as all these beliefs and teachings, and then we have to kind of like, the output has to be something that's authentic. It can't be just like, I'm kind of sneaking around doing this or lying about this other thing, or like living like a double life. Some people have to for their safety, I get it, but it's like, it's still not going to make life easier. It's not going to make life happier. It's going to make it more stressful when you're like hiding from different stuff. So, and especially if it's something you feel like you need for your own happiness and well-being, because that's what you believe will make you feel better. If you feel like being vegan would make you feel better and you would find like happiness in it, but you're not allowed to for some reason, or people put you down when you buy tofu because they're like teasing you about it or whatever, and it's like, okay, like, you just, like, sometimes you just have to do what you need to do for yourself, but especially if it's safe, all the more reason. But I get it, not everything's safe for everybody. But I said about 15-20 minutes ago that I was almost done, or maybe 45 minutes ago I said that, I can't remember. But you can tell I like these topics. I'll see when I post this, because I'm not sure if I will, but I'll see. I probably might. I should just post it and then I'll take it down. If I change my mind in the morning, I'll take it down. But yeah, I hope this is helpful. It's kind of my own food for thought, though. It's not really, I know people believe differently. Some people believe, hey, what I was taught, like, that's the right way, and some people aren't going to hear this, and that's fine. But I think it can help people feel like in a happier space to kind of like challenge things, not to a point where you don't really know who you are, but challenge them to kind of test and see who you feel like you are authentically, and just trying to live within your own truth about things. And yeah, well, I hope that was helpful. I gotta go do something else. I can't just do this all night. So thanks for listening.